There we go. Okay. Hello, Libby. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Really, really good. Really happy to be taking the time out this evening to have a conversation with you. And for anybody who's joining us, if you're noticing this live or you come across this later, welcome to our conversation. We're glad to have you here too. My name is Linda Downey. I'm a transformational health and spiritual coach working with women who want to overcome stress and anxiety. This is my friend and colleague, Libby. I'll let her tell you who she is. And tonight we wanted to really talk about really the superpower that forgiveness is, seeing forgiveness as a superpower in your life and maybe helping you shift if you feel stuck anywhere around forgiveness or holding unforgiveness, helping you shift that a little bit to maybe get a little more acquainted where you feel stuck. So that's where our conversation is going to be tonight. But Libby, why don't you go ahead and tell us who you are and then we'll dive in.
Sure. My name is Libby Wright. I am a coach who works with physicians who want to transition from just traditional medicine to a mix of traditional and functional or full functional medicine. I also work with really, really sick patients who have been kind of told there's no hope or they've been bounced around from doctor to doctor and are not finding good answers. So that's who I work with.
Awesome. Um, so, yeah, tonight we wanted to talk about forgiveness. And Libby, if you want to, because it was really your idea, if you want to dive into why you thought that, and then we have a couple of things we want to share with you, some perspectives about that.
Yeah. So, first of all, I think forgiveness is a constant journey that we're on, and sometimes we're more aware of it and able to do it than others. And sometimes it seems to me like, we're kind of carrying a bag around that we don't realize. And if we're not careful, we can be throwing things into our sack that we're dragging around behind us that are unforgiveness. It can be little things, it can be big things, it can be medium things. Um, I've noticed for myself, I'm a pretty laid back, pretty calm person generally. I got really sick a few weeks ago and was feeling very stressed because I was sick and I just couldn't do, like, I like to go, I like to do, I like to be about, out and about doing things. And I was very frustrated that I couldn't. And one of the patterns I've noticed within myself is when I can't do those things, I tend to start getting controlling. I tend to
Mm,
want to I feel out of control because maybe I'm sick or maybe things aren't going the way I wanted or, fill in the blank. Maybe I'm the only person who experiences this, but when I get stressed, I tend to want to control things. And I say that facetiously because I think like that's a pretty common human experience, right? When we feel stressed, we want to somehow get control. And I was praying about something this weekend that I was feeling very stressed about and very out of control about and frustrated. And I I started praying the Lord's Prayer and I got to the point, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And of course, I'm thinking about all the people who've stressed me out that I should really forgive them and they're horrible people for for making me feel stressed out, which we all say these things in our own heads, right? And then as I was really like thinking and praying about it, I realized, okay, wait, hold on. What does the word trespass mean?
mm.
What does it mean to you, Linda?
Trespass, overstepping your bounds,
Mm-hmm.
trespassing onto somebody else's territory, into somebody else's business,
Mm-hmm.
trespassing, what you might think of as actual real estate, on the land when you're trespassing on somebody's property, but anywhere in their business, like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what the picture that came to my mind is we had a lot of acreage when I was growing up, and our family was always hunting and managing the land. And we had these huge no trespassing signs because we really wanted to make sure no one would get hurt on our land because we could control and see who was hunting, who was doing whatever. But if someone's trespassed or came on our land without permission, it wasn't so much that like, well, it was upsetting to have someone like coming on our land for sure, but the bigger concern or worry would be that somehow someone would get hurt or something bad would happen to them because they would be in a place they shouldn't be, doing something they shouldn't be doing and putting themselves in harm's way. And because they didn't know who's out there hunting, they don't know what's going on there. And it really got me thinking like, wow, I actually needed to ask God forgiveness for trespassing in his territory, because
Mm,
there are certain things that I control and I do, and decisions and choices I make. There are certain decisions and choices other people make. There are certain decisions and choices that are way above all of our pay grade and God makes. And I was definitely stepping in that territory, telling God how he should, go ahead and fix some things, take care of some things for me. I had it all worked out and figured out how he needed to do that for other people, in my life to make my life better. Again, probably the only one who does this, right? But I was like, God, if you would just do this, it would kind of just fix everything. So why don't you just go ahead and do that? And what I sensed was that I was trespassing into God's territory. And that really at the
mm,
end of the day, it's between that person and God. And I really had, yes, I was being a little bit affected, but really it was between them. And I needed to like butt out and not be trespassing, not be stepping foot into that territory that was not mine. And
yeah.
so I needed to like ask for forgiveness for that and change my behavior, change my thought pattern. And then I also needed to forgive other people who had inadvertently or willingly trespassed into my life and, done things to me or, affected my life in some way. And then I also needed to be forgiving toward myself about the fact that I'm not perfect and I do these things sometimes. And so, really, as we think about all these different facets of forgiveness, there's a whole lot in this world we can't control. And what I love is, being able to recognize that there's a loving Heavenly Father that's there watching over us, protecting us, and this is His territory. There are things we control, there are things that we do, but at the end of the day, there has to be a trust. There has
Mm,
to be an acceptance. There has to be a peace that at the end of the day, God is in control and He is managing what's going on in life. And I've talked to people on both sides of the political aisle this week, and there's a lot of people who are feeling a lot of feelings around this too. Like I don't forget, unforgiveness or frustration or out of controlness and not understanding why people are behaving the way they're behaving. We're also about to get into the holidays if you're watching us live or a recent recording. That's another big area where people have a lot of expectations, and sometimes there's a lot of unforgiveness that's harbored, and maybe it's things that we are unforgiving we don't even realize we're being unforgiving about. There also may be things that we've done to people that we don't even realize we've done. Maybe we've harmed them unintentionally and caused them pain. And so I just think this is a really beautiful time to think about the power of forgiveness.
yes, it is a superpower. That's why I titled this event The Superpower. If you can see it that way, not as something you're supposed to do, not as something like, oh, I'll be the bigger person, but it's actually a superpower. It's a gift and a grace that you can find within yourself because we all have the ability. It's really a choice. So many things were going through my mind, Libby, when you were sharing what you were sharing. And one thing is, if anybody's ever heard of Byron Katie, I'm pretty sure this is her saying, but she says, there's my business, there's your business, and there's God's business. Anytime that I'm in your business or God's business, I suffer. So
Hmm.
the suffering comes when we're inserting ourselves. I think I know how they should be doing their thing. I know how she should be handling her children. I know,
Yes.
what they should be doing. And God, why aren't you handling my life better? You should be doing this. When we put ourselves in God's business or somebody else's business, we suffer. And that's what you were explaining so beautifully is what you saw in your own life. The other thing that I thought of when you were talking was the Ho'oponopono prayer, which I think you might be familiar of. But
Yes.
if there's people listening, that is a Hawaiian prayer. It's actually like a tradition in Hawaii in their culture that they have taken on. And I don't know how many current, like younger generation people still do it, but historically, the Hawaiians took on and used this prayer. It has a dance that goes with it to help heal the world. The
Mhm.
intention behind it was to send healing energy out into the world. And this prayer is 4 lines. If you've never heard it before, it's 4 lines. And I actually took an 8-hour class on this 4-line prayer. So I learned pretty deeply about each of the lines. And the first line is, I love you. And when we say love, when we use love, when we speak love, we get God's attention. So the intention of that very first line, as the Hawaiians go out to the edge of the water to help heal the world, that's what they want to do, is get God. I love you. So now God's paying attention, especially when two or more are there, right? Whenever two or more, so you have a whole culture of people. The second line is, I'm sorry. And sometimes people use it if you haven't really learned the intention. You could be saying, I'm sorry to your spouse, to your neighbor, to your child, in your head or whatever, about for healing a certain thing. But in the original intention of this prayer, the I'm sorry is exactly what you just said, Libby, which is, I'm sorry, I forgot to stay in partnership with you. I forgot that I come from you and you are my source and you handle things. I'm sorry, I forgot. I've been trying over here to do it on my own. I've been trying to control things. That's exactly that line, which is why I thought of it when you shared that. So I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me for trying to control and take it on myself. That's the third line. Forgiveness. Please forgive me for trying to do it on my own. And I'm going to remember and give it back to you. It's not my business. It's your business how this works out, how this unfolds. And then the last line is thank you, which is the gratitude. It's actually just like I've talked about at other times, what I've learned as effective prayer. Acceptance, acknowledge where you're at, accept, and then speak gratitude into the outcome. So that's the Hawaiians. Totally on par with what you were saying with yourself. So if you're interested, anybody, you could Google the Ho'oponopono prayer. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I used to lay in bed at night and say those four lines over and over and over when I was really, really, and this was years ago, stressed out, couldn't sleep, a lot of anxiety about so many things in my life, everything. My daughter was still alive in the hospital, our finances, her health, our marriage, like everything. And it just, the way that I calmed myself to be able to sleep was to say those four lines. So forgiveness and asking and including that and making it a practice in your own life. Where do I need to forgive is really a superpower. And we actually had a chart I wanted to show you. Is there something you want to say, Libby, before I bring this
No,
up?
I think that's beautiful. Well said. Let's look at the chart.
Okay, so hopefully you all can see this. I'm going to try to make it be bigger. So this is a map of consciousness. If you've never heard of David Hawkins, he has passed away. He was a psychologist, I think, from England. Really, really smart. You might want to look up his books. He's got several books. They're this thick. It's not an easy read, but this, and he's not the only one, but he really created this particular version of this concept. And I thought to bring this up because right in my client group, I have two different groups right now, and we have all together been working on exactly what consciousness level are we in? How is that affecting our life experience? How do we move up? So I just want to, we don't want to be on here for hours and hours, but I want to take this really quickly so that you can see consciousness is like the way that you are seeing your world. How would you, is there something else that
Yeah, I
consciousness
think
brings to?
I think for me, what it's like is if you think about it, like if you're a photographer, you have different
Mhm.
lenses on your camera based on what you want to capture. So if you're doing a really close-up shot of something, you're gonna have one kind of lens. If you're doing a
Mm,
big, like, panoramic landscape, you're gonna have a different lens. We're meaning makers all throughout life. We're always making meaning, as Linda likes to say. And so, really, what it is like sometimes we were kind of like, as children, we were like a little camera that had a lens attached to it. Whether it was the landscape lens, the close-up lens, a different kind of there's all kinds of lenses if you're into photography. And so sometimes the lens that we would naturally gravitate toward, or the way that we would naturally view a situation is kind of a good way to look at this. So,
Yeah,
if
I
and
like
also, like, just at our resting state. It's not like, okay, if I really think hard about it and really work at it. No, it's just like in neutral, where would you be?
that. Yeah.
And it's the cool thing about it is if you think about your life like a camera body, is if you don't like the lens you're looking at life through, like maybe you're down in apathy, guilt, shame, fear. The cool thing is you can with the right kind of guidance and help, you can detach that lens, say thank you for that, moving on, and choose a different lens that you're going to frame your life with. Does that make sense?
Does to me 100%.
Okay.
And that's exactly that's exactly the work that we've just been doing with in my client groups. But if you look over here on the left, I just want to walk through this really quickly for you if you're new to this. On this left hand side, this is the level of consciousness that you're at, you could be living your life for years and years at a certain consciousness level. Even in a given day, we can sometimes move through different consciousness levels. So shame is the lowest. If you hold shame, which is a viewpoint of yourself, then you are operating at the lowest consciousness level, which has this next column here, which are numbers. That's an energy. An energy, we are all made of energy, and energy is moving through our body at all times. Even when we're dead, when we die, it takes energy to decompose a physical body. Interestingly enough, the energy it takes to decompose a dead body is right around the same energy level as shame,
Mm.
just at 20. That's the measurement of the number of waves, I think in a second, or maybe even a smaller time frame. I'm not sure. So people who are holding shame walking around are like, barely above being dead. So as we move up, guilt, apathy, grief, desire, anger, right? The numbers go up because the energy is moving faster. When you look at this third column, it's like, what's the predominant emotional state that you live in when you are in this consciousness level? So like for shame, the predominant emotion that you feel a lot of the time is humiliation. Somebody says something and you feel like they're ridiculing you, you feel criticized, you feel, anything that's like that. And all it was maybe a comment, but your
Yeah.
consciousness level is going to see that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, so also as you're looking at this, don't judge yourself. This is like
Yeah.
the knee jerk, like what is your baseline? So is the knee
Hmm.
jerk, are you easily offended by people? Are you easily humiliated? Are you, someone who just puts themselves out there and, is like always optimistic? Kind of what is your baseline? And again, these numbers can move and change based on circumstances, based on what's going on in your life. It's not like you're always in this state at all times. But if you had to just look at this and say, you know what, most of the time, my view of life is that, the world is hopeless.
Hmm.
Or is my view on life that, what, life is pretty harmonious and pretty meaningful. Okay. And then, talking about even, okay, well, what does that mean about me? How do I feel
Hmm.
about me? That's what the next, or how does God view me? There's a lot of
Yes.
there's a lot of like even very religious people who believe that God despises them, who believe
Yeah.
that they can never be good enough, that they're just a
Right.
worm crawling around in the ground. And by the way, that is not true biblical belief. Yes, we make mistakes, but God's whole goal is to reunite with us, to be one with us. And then, so yeah, I didn't mean to take that over, but I mean, I just think it's really interesting that if maybe you're like, well, I don't know where I would be. Look at the view of life column. How do you
Yeah.
see your life? That's a great
Yeah.
place to start. If you say, well, I don't know what my predominant emotional state is, that's kind of like, I don't know, is anyone blissed out all the time? Maybe people are. I don't know. I think emotions tend to ebb and flow a little bit. View of life can give us a really good baseline. Like, are you frightened most of the time? Are you
You're
hopeful
right.
most of the time? Like, how do other people describe you? Like, wow, you're a really optimistic person. Okay, well, that's good to know. I'm probably maybe in that willingness column, maybe I'm a, so really paying attention to that and just seeing, and then asking, well, is this where I want to stay? Is this where I want to live my life?
Yeah, because what I want you to notice over here in the margin is that these from shame up to pride, and this doesn't mean pride like really acknowledging yourself. That kind of pride is good, to know what you're good at and to be proud of your accomplishments. This pride is like here, scorn, demanding, like I'm better than you. It's like a winning,
It's
putting others,
egotism, right?
egotism. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anywhere in here, you're living as a victim of life. This is called victim consciousness from here to here. When you cross the line at a frequency of 200 and you move from these lower level consciousness levels, these lower emotional states, and I say lower because they're heavy, the numbers are lower. When you move up into courage, you cross the line from being a victim in your like life is happening to me. I'm always angry. I'm always afraid. I think that things work against me. I feel hopeless. I withdraw from people. I isolate myself, whatever it is. Now you move up into a creator consciousness where you're saying to yourself, the lens that you're looking through, as Libby said, is I create my life. It doesn't matter what others have done. It doesn't matter what my circumstances have been. I create my life. So that line right there is the crossover. And the reason I brought this up in this conversation on forgiveness is because here's forgiveness. So when you're up in these higher levels, reason and integrity, so you're at cause, you're making choices, you've moved out of survival and you're into making choices and behaviors and being creator at life. The highest levels are when you're really living from your spiritual self. And I don't think I was saying this to my clients the other night on our call. I think you'd probably have to go and live on a mountain or in a cave and just not be around other people and the way our society is to really be that. But that would be Jesus, Buddha, maybe Mother Teresa, other people that you might think of throughout history who really reached these higher level states and could stay there. But even Jesus came down from the mountain at the end of Lent and he was afraid, right? Because he was human. So the human man part of him, said, is there any other way we could do this?
Mhm.
So, it's, as Libby said, don't judge yourself. This one is pretty, I think, rare, but these are not rare. And forgiveness here, I don't know if guys can see my cursor, but forgiveness is an emotional state that you choose to be in. The consciousness level that you choose to live in is I'm going to accept, rather than think that shouldn't have happened. I should have, that college shouldn't, if my parents had money, I could have gone to a different college, or if that college had accepted me, I would have had a different job, and all the reasons why life didn't go. When you accept, when you choose acceptance, there's a lot of work that we do to get here, but when you choose to move up in your consciousness levels, forgiveness is part of being a creator in your life. If you are down here, I'm not forgiving them. You might have all the reasons in the world, and they might be really right. That person did do you wrong. They shouldn't have made that choice. And you want to hold on to your anger, or no, I'm not forgiving them. I'm over it. I'm moving on, but I'm not forgiving them. They don't deserve my forgiveness, and I'm not doing it. You keep yourself below the line. You keep yourself as a victim to whatever's happened and that other person. That's why it's a superpower, because when you choose to do what it takes to forgive, you change how your body is functioning, because your body gets released from the tension that it's holding. Unforgiveness keeps you in a stress state. Unforgiveness keeps you from moving forward in other relationships later going forward. So it really, really is one of the most powerful things that you can choose to do. in our work together, we actually spend quite a bit of time on forgiveness, and we work on what are the tools and a certain process. It's a really spiritual approach to forgiveness, but the process, and sometimes people are like, I need to keep working on it, but I'm willing. There's the willingness is right there backing up to it. Courage. I'm going to decide. I don't know how I'm going to do it. It's scary, but I'm going to do it, right? Stepping into courage first,
Yeah.
trusting, as Libby said before, being willing,
And,
and now
if you don't feel like if you're maybe, so I'm just going to play devil's advocate for a second, Linda, with all this, because maybe someone's sitting there going, well, this is too woo woo. I mean, like, how do I assign myself a number like that? Okay, so let's just think about this from a really practical standpoint. The lower numbers, the survival paradigm is really victim mentality. If you're walking around thinking you're a victim all the time, everyone's doing you wrong, everybody else gets the good things, and I don't get the good things, I don't get to win. If those thoughts are going in your head, you're in the victim mentality. I don't care if you want to assign it a number, a color, a locker, it doesn't matter. Just like that's where you are, right? Okay, then you get into reason and integrity. And really, what that is about is self directing. It's about
mm,
owning your own life and you deciding where you go from here. Because, yes, there are absolutely circumstances that people have gone through that should not have happened. Absolutely. It's not when we don't forgive, very often it's because we are trying to protect ourselves. And so don't judge yourself. Very often it's because you feel like, oh my gosh, if I forgive them, then that could happen to me again or something worse. I've got to keep it in the forefront. That's not what we're talking about here. When you get
right,
into that self leadership and full ownership of your life, you're not going to be a victim again. It can't happen. It won't happen.
right.
Can it? I mean, like, okay, could a hurricane happen? Yeah, maybe. But I'm saying like that's not going to be the overarching storyline of your journey. And you
Good
will know
point.
how to deal with it and have a different way of dealing with it so you don't stay a victim. The other
Yeah.
thing I'll say, devil's advocate, Linda, I mean, I'm sure you haven't been, and I'm saying this wink, wink, nod, nod. I'm sure neither Libby, you or Linda, you have ever been through anything as hard as I've been through. And like, if you had been through what I've been through, then you wouldn't forgive either.
Yep. That's a good one. Heard that.
So have I. And I was actually talking to my high school students about that today and about how easy it is for people to look at me now and say, "Oh, well, you have never had anything hard happen to you. You look like you're fine. Everything's good. You've had an easy life." Not true, even kind of. Same with Linda. Linda has like been there, done that, got the t-shirt, has the photo framed, like she's good. She's got the souvenir mug, like she has been through it. And so I would just like to interject here for a second. This is a really, really hard thing to do on your own.
Hmm.
If you have not trained yourself, this is like a marathon runner. You don't just go run out there and go run 18 miles or 50 miles or whatever. You don't go adventure, get up one day and decide to go adventure race, right? Like it takes work, it takes discipline, it takes training. And I would just like to encourage you if you want forgiveness training, if you want to get to a point where you can hang in this reason and integrity, this owning your own life slice of life, because it's beautiful here, by the way. Is it perfect? No, but it's beautiful here. And it feels really great to know that I don't have to be subject to other people or to these yucky emotions. Because even when I
Yeah.
go down in there for a minute, I don't stay there. I dip for a second and I'm right back up.
Right.
Sometimes I dip for a weekend, be honest, okay? But we that's not where we live. That's not where we dwell. And that's what we're talking about. If you need help figuring out and learning and training how to be in that trusting, optimistic, forgiveness, understanding, serenity place in life, we would love to help you because Linda and I have walked the desert. We have been through a lot of hard things and we have had to by God's grace figure this out kind of on our own and do take a lot of left turns before we got to the place that we really finally could say we had an understanding of not only how to do it in our own lives, but how to help other people do it faster and better. Does it mean our life is perfect? No. No, we still struggle. We just shared that with you today. So if you would like help with that, I would love it, Linda, if you would drop in the comments a link where you can do a free conversation with us to chat about how we might be able to help you get to like dwelling in this kind of space.
Sure, I absolutely can do that. You know, you always remember to to mention that at the end, and I should know to have that prepared to have the link. um, so yes, hold on. So what I wanted to point out too was when you were saying how, you know, once you're in reason and integrity and you don't have to worry that the same thing's going to happen again. If you look over on across from forgiveness, you see transcendence. You transcend the way that those here, I'm just pulling up the link, the way that those the things land in your life, the way that you see them, the lens that you see them through is very different.
Yes,
And
and let me speak to that for a second while you're pulling the link up here, because this is such an important point that many people don't realize. We talk about this sometimes. It's the roller coaster analogy, right? Some people are gripping the bar, hanging on for dear life, begging God not to die in the next 3 minutes. Other people have their arms in the air, they're waving it, they're having a great time. There's other people throwing up. Same exact experience, different response. That's what we're talking about here. If you're in
hmm,
this area of reason and integrity, does that mean you're not going to have any more problems? Does that mean you're not going to face any challenges? Of course not. Like, nobody gets out of life alive. Nobody gets a get out of jail free card for this life. We all face challenges. It's how do you face the challenge? Do you
hmm,
rise up to it? Do you say, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this one differently, or do you hang out down in that victim mindset? And
yeah.
that's what we want to help you get to that different level.
Yeah, because you take a moment and look at your patterns. What have your patterns been in your relationships? What have your patterns been in your physical body, like the way your body responds to the challenges in your life? Do you have trouble with self-care, like eating things you shouldn't eat, drinking too much alcohol, managing, like, is it that kind of pattern? Where are your patterns? How have they been showing up? Because that can tell you a lot about where you're at here. So if you're like, you know, yeah, I get what you're saying, but I'm not that concerned about forgiveness. Ask yourself, what are the patterns in my life that I haven't been able to break, that are painful for me, that I really wish were going another way? Because that will give you some insight into
Mhm.
where you're at. Um,
And
you
you
know,
may not be like a screaming crazy person when you get hit with hard things. You might shut down.
mm,
You might get depressed. You might get an autoimmune condition. It's not always visual. It's not like always out there for the world to see. And that's why we have to self-reflect a little bit and say, okay, like, okay, maybe I don't lose it and, go running into the street screaming, but maybe I have like an autoimmune condition or two and we don't really know why. Maybe I get depressed around the holiday season. Maybe,
yeah,
I mean, here's a great question. Do you feel supported in your life all the time? Do you
right,
see that everywhere you go? Or are you always like, wow, you know what? Everybody else always gets the thing. It's always tragic. It's always someone else's turn. Someone else always gets to win and I have to lose.
right.
And so just like also listen to the tapes that are playing in your head, and that's going to reveal a lot to you about where you're really at on this scale. Because like I said, it doesn't matter whether we give it a color, a number, or whatever. It's like, what do you want? And then I would ask after that, after look at, okay, wow, I'm really at this place. Is that where you want to be? Is that where you want to
Mhm,
dwell the rest of your life? Is that where the people who you love, is that what you want to be modeling to them? Or do you want to model something different to them? Because I know we have to go, and this is a whole nother conversation we could have. But oftentimes, even these lenses we're looking through are generational. We may not even
mm,
understand why we think this way or feel this way. But maybe two or three or four generations back, there was someone who attach this lens to our family's camera. And the
Yeah.
cool thing is, anyone can break this pattern at any time. You just need to have the right tools in your toolkit. And it is not easy. We are not saying that, but it is worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you, everyone who's watching live right now. I see some people. Sergio said hello. I don't know if you're still watching, Sergio, but hi, thank you. And if you watch later the replay, please, if you have any questions or thoughts or anything unfolds for you from this conversation, we'd love to hear that. And we'd love to talk to you. It's a free conversation if you choose to find a spot on our calendar. So I look forward to hopefully speaking with you, and Libby does too. And thanks for listening with us today.
All right. Thanks,
Anything else?
everyone. That's great. I
Okay.
think we'll end on a high note. You can do this, and we want you
Okay.
to.
Awesome.
All right.
All right.
Take
Good.
care. Thanks. Bye bye.